Ms. Sandra Ratchen, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunities to as well make some remarks on this Article 3 in conjunction with the definitions of Article 4, and I will make some brief remarks and then try to provide some proposal and ideas as my colleagues on the panel already did. So first, on the elements of the scope relating to which businesses or business activities that shall be covered. Having carefully listened to the various positions over the last years, it seems to me, and I think it resonates with what has been said by my co-panelists, it seems to me that to go forward in this process, we will really need to strike the right balance between addressing the key and specific regulatory protection and accountability gaps in the context of transnational business activities on the one hand, but on the other hand, the concern that many of us have not to create conditions for new or increased impunity. Current Article 3.1 and the definition in Article 4.2 is, I think, an attempt to be faithful to the mandate given by the resolution, including the footnote, and to find the balance I've just mentioned. However, as we've heard several times, excluding activities that are not taking place in more than one jurisdiction from the realm of the future instrument pose a number of problems. So having said that, I think, and I concur with what Olivier de Schutter just said, I think that the definition in Article 4.2, as it is currently, and is trying to be as broad as possible in capturing what could be considered having a transnational character, could have implications for actors that may not be the ones we want to focus on, while missing others. So we have to address several issues in the current draft. The second point that I would like to make is on the rights covered, so Article 3.2. I think it's positive that the language of the Article 3.2 is broad in saying all international human rights and those recognized rights recognized under domestic law, but I think here again, and we heard that from several delegations, some clarity may be needed. As it could be subject to interpretation what international human rights are, it's not really clear, and there may be rights or limitations thereof, more probably that are enshrined in domestic law, which may not be compatible with international human rights law. And in any case, the catalogues of rights may be very different, obviously, between various states and jurisdictions that could be concerned by a case of violations involving transnational business activities. So having said all of that, I have several proposals and I won't have time to go in details into them. I'm happy to provide them or go into that in the discussion after that. But I think we need provisions to address the issues raised by the exclusion of certain types of activities. We heard several solutions or proposals by my co-panelists. I think we could think of a general restatement of state obligations to protect, and at the same time the responsibility of businesses to respect human rights in the body of the text, not only in the preamble. And there we could be inspired by different or existing wording in other international instruments. Again, I have several proposals, but I think one of the one I may address briefly here or propose briefly here, it's an adaptation from an agreement to implement the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and it has an Article 3 that I try to apply to our context here, and that could read something like, in a first subparagraph, unless otherwise provided, this instrument applies to business activities of a transnational character that go beyond single national jurisdictions, except that Articles X, Y, and Z apply also to the business activities within single national jurisdictions. And a subpara 2, in the exercise of its sovereign rights for the purpose of regulating business activities within single national jurisdiction, the state shall apply mutatis mutandis the principles contained in Articles X, Y, and Z. So this could be as a general provision that could help us in trying to find this balance, but obviously there are other proposals that were also suggested by other colleagues and inspiration from other instruments that could also make clear during or all through the text that whenever provisions and articles shall definitely apply to all businesses, that this is clearly then appearing as such. And that could be applied notably to criminal liability or due diligence, as we heard in other conversations already, or sessions. Then I will finish with some proposals for, in relation to the need for clarifications on the scope in terms of the rights covered. I think Article 3.2 could follow the wording of the UN guiding principles that refer to a minimum package of core internationally recognized human rights, composed of International Bill of Human Rights and the 8 ILO core conventions. But this may be usefully, because it's a minimum package, complemented by a safeguard specifying that this shall be without prejudice of other international human rights obligations of individual states under the treaties that they are parties to. And in addition to that, to address the potential concern around the rights recognized under domestic law, various conventions can also be of inspiration here, and we could think of something in following the lines, or the following lines. The provisions of the present convention shall in no way affect the rights of parties to adopt stricter domestic measures than those provided by this instrument for preventing and remedying human rights violations in the context of business activities, and adopt extended list of legal protections in compliance with international human rights law. And I finish with a rather more limited comment, and this comment goes to the definition about victims. I think because of the way person is used all through the document otherwise, meaning most of the time both legal and natural persons, I think it would be interesting here and potentially important to add natural before person in the definition of victims, and that would be in line with Rule 85, for instance, of the Rules of Procedures of the Rome Statutes. Thank you very much.
I thank